Public Affairs very much thanks Residco, our sole corporate underwriter, for helping to make the production of this show possible.
I think pay in any profession should always be based on performance. I want to go as far as to say that public sector is the only place where you don't find that, where you find opportunities to get promoted, to have an automatic step pay raise without it being tied to performance whatsoever. One of the biggest issues, but I would go for more low-hanging fruit, and I would advocate that the money follows the student, that we actually do more with charter schools and school choice.
Well, why do we have over the last 2 years, 2021 to 2023, I think we got like a 70% increase in major crimes? Welcome to Public Affairs. We're talking today about a great humanitarian crisis. We're hearing that word a lot as we tape this on December 18th, are those two words, humanitarian crisis. We have our own humanitarian crisis here in Chicago. We have, last 20 years, some would say last 50, 60 years, we have this crisis at CPS, Chicago Public Schools, where kids, I would say, basically are not learning how to read or do math. Some would say they're not learning how to read at grade level. They're not learning how to do basic math with proficiency. And why is that a crisis? Because the real critics point out they're losing the American dream. If you can't do math with basic proficiency, if you can't read or read at grade level, how can you achieve the American dream? And so, Cornel, Darden, you know something about jobs and the economy. You are the chair of the Chicago Southland Black Chamber of Commerce, right?
Yes, sir.
And you are the publisher at the Journal Ledger, right?
The Southland Journal.
Excuse me, publisher at the Southland Journal.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Is it a humanitarian crisis at CPS?
Absolutely.
Why do you think so?
Well, education is the hallmark of civilization. And when we have such a large segment of our Cook County population, our Chicago population, not reading and having the fundamental skills to be successful in a complex economy, you can't have nothing but problems arise from that. And those people are at an extreme disadvantage in competing in a complex economy.
79%, I think recently, of blacks at CPS graduated. Mm-hmm. Hispanics, 84%. But only 11% of those graduates read at grade level.
Yep.
Of black students, 11% of black students read at grade level, and 8% do math proficiently. And on the Hispanic side, although 84% are graduating, 18% read at grade level, and 15% do math proficiently. So those numbers, 11%, 18%, look, I've seen for the last 20 years, talked to Paul Vallis when he was at Superintendent CPS from 1995 to 2001. When he left, I don't think they were somewhere in that 10 to 20% range for black students and Hispanic students.
Yep.
You just go to the next grade. Black, Hispanic, white, doesn't matter, right? And it doesn't matter how you're doing on math, you just go. And that goes from second grade to third grade to fourth grade. And why do you suppose that is? Why do they do that?
I think that they're hiding their incompetency, and they want to keep their jobs. They don't want to go back and look at what they're doing to actually achieve their goals. That'll be too hard for them. That'll be too much of a battle for them to take on. So they might as well just kick the can down the road and just have a easy breezy career.
Who's they?
Teachers.
The teachers.
Absolutely.
Do the teachers just sort of control their life and they just do that? Or is there any force? Does the Chicago Teachers Union do that?
Well,
what is propelling things here?
The Chicago Teachers Union, absolutely. The Chicago Teachers Union is the vehicle to which the teachers pretend that they have a voice, as if they're victims and that they need this voice to represent them so that they're not treated unfairly and things like that. But I think it's become more of like a bureaucratic mafia in which they're just there to take. They're not there to educate. They're there just to have a comfortable life and a comfortable existence. So performing well is not one of their goals.
They're there so the Chicago Teachers Union officers, president, vice president, may pull in $300,000 a year, and they got lots of other people making good money, more often than teachers who at CPS are averaging, I believe, about $100,000 a year under that contract negotiated in 2019 by Lori Lightfoot, which will be ending in 2024. A new contract's coming up.
Yep.
So they're doing well. CTU, their officers are doing well.
Very
People
well.
who work there are doing well. The teachers are doing well. But the kids, not so much. They're not going to have the good life, are they?
It's going to be
On average,
it's going to put them at a disadvantage.
if they can't read at grade level and they can't do math proficiency, it's maybe the understatement of the day to say at a disadvantage. I mean, what's it like when they go out looking for a job? Can they go to college easily if they can't read?
Not easily.
No, it's hard. They'd almost have to go to college and get remedial skills, learn how to read, and then they go on to another college.
And Jeff, actually, I used to be a professor at the city colleges of Chicago. And that was a huge problem in the city colleges system, remedial courses. We had to offer so many remedial courses that for first semester students, we had more remedial courses on the schedule than regular college.
Brandon Johnson, he's the current mayor. So you think he'd say, oh yeah, Jeff, I agree. The American dream is lost for these kids. It's terrible. And I'm the mayor now, and I'm going to crack the whip. Boy, I'm going to push the Chicago Teachers Union, the CTU, to really get things right. He's not going to say that, why?
No, he used to work for the CTU.
17 years, right?
Yeah.
As the organizer.
Yes, sir.
So he's not going to say that.
No.
So the governor, J.B. Pritzker, he's going to say that?
No.
He's not going to say that.
No. Wouldn't be politically astute for him.
Because why?
Because politically, they are both connected to people that support the CTU. So, that's not a good political move to talk bad about the people that support you, that you rely on for support.
So nobody's going to do anything. Kids are going to go through, they're going to miss out on the American dream, the middle class things that many people enjoy as a part of the American dream. Get a house, buy a house, have a stable family, have kids. They go on to do well in high school. They go on to do well in college. You can do anything, we're told. If you're in America, no matter how you start out, there's nothing that's beyond your reach. You ever
That's
hear
right.
that? That's the American dream, right?
I totally believe
That's
that.
why immigrants are coming in at the rate of 4 million a year now, because they just walk across the border. Another issue, but people are coming in because they heard in America anything is possible, right?
That's right.
But we know if you can't read, many of those things aren't possible.
Yeah.
And the governor's not going to do anything, and the mayor's not going to do anything. You're the chair of the Chicago Southland Black Chamber of Commerce. You got a lot of clout. You got a lot of members right there.
Yep.
How many counties do you cover?
5.
5 different counties. You got a lot of clout. But if you're focusing in Chicago, you're focusing on CPS, what would you do? Just forget whether you can accomplish it. But what would make things so much better in terms of teaching kids how to read? What could we change?
I think advocating with our elected officials, whether they're Democrat or Republican, whoever is in office.
What would you do? Because the contracts, if you looked at the contracts that CPS strikes with the CTU, it's just like the teacher salaries go up based on how many years they're there, right?
Yep. It's
That's
not based
not
on
right.
performance.
It's not based on performance. So would that be the first thing you do?
No.
No, you wouldn't change it to base it on, say, what the improvement was with the students over the course of the year?
I would go for more low-hanging fruit. And of course, that is a big issue, one of the biggest issues. But I would go for more low-hanging fruit, and I would advocate that the money follows the student. That we actually do more with charter schools and school choice, and I think that is something that
Okay, so you
easier.
push that's controlled by the Illinois legislature.
Yes,
So without getting political, you're going to need Republicans and a lot of Democrats to join together to accomplish that, right?
yep,
To get school choice. Wirepoint says we spend almost $30,000 per kid per year at CPS. So if we just, Milton Friedman, one of the greatest economists of the 20th century at the University of Chicago, he really promoted school choice.
yes, sir.
I think if Milton were here, he'd just say, hey, if you spend $30,000 per kid per year, some of that comes from the Fed, some of that comes from the state, some of that comes from the city. Figure out how to do it, get the $30,000 in a package, get a voucher and say, give all of these kids at CPS a $30,000 voucher. It's little details, how you're cutting across jurisdictions, but you can work that out.
Yes, sir.
They can take that $30,000 and spend it at the school of their choice. Tell us more about how that works. When you say the school of their choice, what kinds of schools are included in that opportunity set for the students?
We're talking private schools, parochial schools, charter schools. Basically schools where the parents and that family can make a decision and say that we feel more comfortable sending our child here. We think that they're going to get a better education and have a better lifestyle going to this school.
Okay, so everything, because then they could stay. There are some good schools at CPS that are performing.
Mm-hmm.
Some of these kids, 10 to 20% Black, are learning how to read at grade level. Similar percentage for Hispanic students.
Mm-hmm.
So somebody's learning.
Mm-hmm.
If they like that school, if they're at a magnet school, a select enrollment school, that's at CPS.
Yep.
They can go there. They can go to a charter school. They can go to the private school of their choice. They can go to a parochial school. They can go to a non-sectarian school, a Jewish day school, a Muslim school. They can homeschool.
Yeah.
If parents want to stay home and they need books and they need curriculum and they need tutoring and assistance, they could spend that $30,000 on getting that assistance.
Yeah, homeschooling is actually becoming a lot more popular as of late. I know in Chicago there's a big homeschool movement on the South Side. A young lady named Latasha Fears, I believe. She most recently ran for lieutenant governor with Max Solomon. And she has a huge homeschool initiative on the South Side.
All right. The Black folks are one of the biggest growth segments of the homeschooling movement.
Yes, sir.
They really want control of their kids' education because they know what I'm saying. It's not working.
Yes, sir.
It's almost like, what have you got to lose? If your kid's not learning how to read, well, you can do that. That's the worst. You're the same.
Yep.
But if you can improve that and the kids learn how to read, you've made a dramatic change in your kid's life, what he or she can expect out of life.
That's right.
The good life, the American dream.
That's right.
Right.
Tenure used to be, well,
It used to be 4 years, I think, at some point.
Well, it was supposed to be based on protection of intellectual freedom.
Well, that's a joke. These people aren't going around trying to practice these teachers' intellectual freedom.
Mm-hmm.
They're supposed to be teaching
Yep.
kids. It'd be nice if they don't do anything and they just focus on reading
Yep.
and stop teaching people, as we're here, what to think. Start teaching them how to think logically, rationally.
But now, Jeff, tenure has become a protection. I would consider it a protection racket, so that once you get tenure, you're protected. Now you can't get fired. Now, no matter how poorly you perform, your job is okay.
All right. So we've kind of solved that problem. Really, if we could get school choice adopted, and then people go to some schools at their choice, if they don't teach the kids how to read, well, then they try another school.
Yeah.
And there's competition. They can change every year. They can change during the year. Competition works that way, right?
Yes, sir.
If you go to a computer store and it doesn't give you the computer you want, you go to another store. You're not going back to the same store, right?
That's right. If the food doesn't taste well, you're going to go to another restaurant.
That's what America's about, free enterprise, right?
Yes, sir.
Sometimes when kids are in 4th grade, 5th grade, 6th grade, they can't read. What do? They might drop out. They might
become
look
distracted.
What?
They become distracted.
And what do they end up doing?
Well, as a young kid, I think most kids are very optimistic about life and about achieving the American dream. But as they get older and they can't read, they're not performing well in school, they lose sight of that American dream. They become distracted. They get off into some of the social issues that plague our communities, like crime, drugs, and things like that.
Right. So we could have a crime problem, I think most would contend anyway in Chicago. We'll talk about that in a minute or two. But this simply adds to it.
Yes, sir.
It's a rational thing. If your options are reduced and you're not learning how to read, and you haven't learned that by the time you're in the 3rd, 4th, or 5th grade, probably not going to change later.
Yes,
so
sir.
Why not drop out and go make some money?
That's right.
And if it's illegal, well, so be it,
Yes, sir.
Right. So there's that problem. And then we got this other problem, though, in Chicago. Many would say we have a state's attorney, Kim Foxx, who doesn't want to prosecute.
Mm.
You've heard that, right?
I've heard that,
You
absolutely.
think that's the case?
I haven't looked at that too much. I do think that State's Attorney Kim Foxx is a very innovative politician. And sometimes innovation is not good. What they say, you don't have to recreate the wheel. So I think that her life experiences growing up, I believe she grew up in Cabrini Green
Right.
projects, that she's taken a very innovative approach to running the state's attorney's office.
And what's the core of that innovative approach?
Trying things that haven't been tried before. And that could cause issues because you don't know what the outcome of those, trying new things would do. And I think that have caused a lot of political angst against her.
Well, there's this guy, Charles Stimson from Heritage, Cully Stimson, been a guest on this show. He's written a book called Rogue Prosecutors. He says around 2015-16, George Soros gave a lot of money to groups and prosecutors around the country. 72 prosecutors around the country were able to win their local races because people didn't pay so much attention to election for state's attorney or district attorney, so he could buy these races in a sense relatively cheaply. Small expenditure of money. Suddenly we have, according to Rogue Prosecutors, that book, we have 65 or so, 65% of the population in the United States being run in terms of law enforcement by rogue prosecutors, by prosecutors who don't really believe in prosecuting.
Okay. Well, I think it's always problematic anytime you kind of pervert the structure of government. I see right here we have the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution right here in front of us. That's a structure, right? And in that structure, certain people have certain roles. If you're a prosecutor, your role is to prosecute crime. You're not a social worker. You're not the judge. There's not a lot of, shouldn't be a lot of wiggle room in what you can do. That's certainly not spelled out in your role in the law. And it's the same with, say, a judge. A judge should not be legislating from the bench.
Right. We have in our Constitution embedded the three branches of government.
That's right.
And in one of the branches is the legislative,
Yes,
the
sir.
Congress. Okay. Another is the executive, which would be the president. Okay. And all the offices under the executive branch. And then we have judiciary. Okay.
Yep.
And that's all set out in the U.S. Constitution. We have an Illinois Constitution, similar structure.
Yes, sir.
We have statutes. It's not up to the state's attorney of Cook County and 102 counties in Illinois. We have 102 state's attorneys.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and there may be some where they're doing double duty of small rural areas, but I don't know. But roughly that 102 counties, 102 state's attorneys, And in any case, they're supposed to enforce the law.
That's right.
If the statutes say these are misdemeanors and these things are violations, it's not up to the state's attorney to say, well, I don't want to enforce that. They have some discretion, but they shouldn't be using it that broadly.
That's right.
Right.
And the more broadly they use that discretion, the more it toes the line.
Okay. So, yeah, because we didn't point out the American dream really comes from the Declaration of Independence, where it talks about citizens of the United States having a right, all citizens, to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. You can't read, you're not getting that right to pursue happiness, to life and liberty. You got all sorts of obstacles to those things.
That's right.
But this Constitution says you got that right, right?
That's right.
You go over to the mayor and say, I got that right. You're not doing anything about it. You're not living by the Declaration of Independence. I don't know. We'll have Brandon Johnson on sometime. Maybe he'll defend it, you know?
Yeah.
I'd like to see what he has to say about that. But back to crime, okay? Back to crime. And Kim Fox, people who've looked at this, Tony Preckwinkle, Cook County Board President, she sort of put her there. Fox isn't running for re-election.
That's
and the point is, people who look at this says, we got to get back to fundamentals. Fundamentals are what? When you got crime, what do? The first thing you do is you need a police department that it believes in constitutional community policing. It's got to be constitutional. Nobody's saying they should be doing anything outside the Constitution. Mm-hmm. And many would say we're doing that in large part, in very, very large part in Chicago now. We were doing some community policing, but there's been so many constraints put on the police. The police are afraid, people say, whatever they do, they're going to be in trouble. So the morale is low. And that's not good.
Yep.
People who are on the south side, on the west side, on the north side, they want good police who will come there and assist them. We now have these people call 911, and 60% they get nobody's home.
Wow.
These are for priority 1 and 2 crime, priority 1 and 2 calls, things where there's bodily personal injury at stake. There's an imminent crime that's about to be committed that they might be able to stop. Nobody's there.
Well, one thing that's evident, Jeff, police morale is at an all-time low. And I think there's a number of things that can be done to boost the morale of the police and give more support to our officers.
Yeah, well, the first thing we could do is remind them they can investigate, and they're not going to be constrained from doing that.
That's right.
And if they find somebody who has probable cause that they committed a crime, they can arrest that person.
That's right.
We're not going to constrain them from doing that. In fact, we want them to arrest the right person for a crime.
That's
not
right.
that they can't, but we want that. And if that person's dangerous, if the judge looks at their record and sees how many times they've been convicted before or arrested and not convicted, what's their record like? And that judge says, looking at the totality of circumstances, that judge thinks we can't now have cash bail, but the judge can detain them prior to trial. Detain them.
That law is a very problematic law.
You think so?
Oh, I know so. To me, it reminds me of a libertarian law. And when I say that, libertarians seem to be on opposite ends of extremes. But with that law, you're going to allow so many criminals to be let back on the street who should be sitting in jail. But on the flip side of that, they're going to be people who are going to have what I would consider their civil rights violated, and they're going to be held in jail without the opportunity to bail out.
Wait a second, but that opportunity is because we can't have cash bail anymore.
That's right.
We used to do that. So you don't want that. You would like them to have an opportunity to have cash bail where the judge can say, okay, you can get out, but it's going to cost you.
That's right.
You want that.
Yes,
but
sir.
the point is that's not the law now.
Yeah.
I mean, the judge can't say, hey, I just want to do things, just like the state's attorney can't say. The judge is not supposed to legislate. The judge is supposed to enforce the law, interpret the law consistent with the statutes and the Illinois Constitution and the U.S. Constitution.
Yep.
And the law says right now, under the Safety Act, yeah, they can't have cash bail, but doesn't mean they have to release them if that person, looking at the totality of circumstances after a hearing, is found to be dangerous to the community, right? So you want the judges to do that.
And I can see for political reasons how
You
that
want
could
to change that law, you go ahead and try and change it. But for the moment, some people say, you may disagree, I want that judge to take a good look, and if that judge determines these people are dangerous to the community, keep them there during the trial. And when the trial is over and they're convicted, if they are, well, then I want the judge to have a real sentence. Don't just say 2 years probation. A lot of people don't know. 2 years probation means no time in jail, no time in prison. Out you go. Maybe you check in every week. You may like that. I don't like that. Do you like that?
The way the current probation system was, I didn't have a problem with it. No.
Okay. So you think we're penalizing people who commit crimes, sometimes multiple crimes, enough? We are doing it enough. Because if we're detaining, if we're prosecuting, if we're convicting, if we're sentencing, if we're keeping them there, well, why do we have over the last 2 years, 2021 to 2023, I think we got like a 70% increase in major crimes. That's what Wirepoints projects, 2 years.
Yes, sir.
Why is crimes going, and for the last 5 years it's been going up. Under Kim Foxx, she's been sort of, I would say, setting the seeds. You don't see these numbers as lies I've just said before, certainly the last 2 years, but I would say over 5 years the seeds were set.
Yes, sir.
Why is that happening? Why is crime going up, violent crime so much, if everything's so la-di-da, as you say?
Well, I would argue that there's a number of factors contributing to the crime rate. And one is what we talked about initially, which is the humanitarian crisis going on at CPS.
Okay, we're past that now. We're now, education aside, now we're talking, you don't want to detain these people who are dangerous. You don't want them making the determination. You said they should be let out while they're waiting for trial.
No, I said people should have a constitutional right to a bail. You should have a constitutional right to a bond.
That is not the law now. Does the law give them discretion to determine if, in fact, on looking at the prior record, looking at the current experience, their view, the judge thinks this is a dangerous criminal and he should be detained, or she?
And they can also...
Does the law say that?
Yes, it does.
Do you think the law should be enforced by that judge?
Oh, absolutely. But on the flip side, guess what they can do? They can take a kid that's 15, that's a cute little kid who's a carjacker, and carjack 10 people and say, you know what? He's just had a hard life. I'm going to let him out. Do you want that guy back on the streets? I mean, it's too...
Wait, no, should they do that with the 15-year-old? Say he put a gun in somebody's face and said, I'm going to blow your head off if you don't give me money. He's a 15-year-old. And say he's done it 3 times. Would you tell the judge he should see that this kid is tried in adult court, not in juvenile hall where he's going to go home with his parents? Would you do that? Would you say the judge, this is time for that 15-year-old to go to an adult court and get an adult sentence? Would you do that?
I would say, given that child's record, if it was that extreme and that bad, then yes, it should be detained and they should be considered a violent criminal.
Hallelujah,
but
making some progress.
The problem with this law is that that person can be considered not to be that dangerous and be let go. It's too much of a wide extreme.
That's the way the law is. I implore you.
And it's bad. It's a bad law.
To start thinking, when the law is bad, what do? You go to your legislature and try to change it, or you go to the courts and say, is it constitutional? You don't say, I am Cornel Darden and I want it differently, and so if I were a judge, I would do it differently. You don't want the judge to doing that, do you?
Well,
you want the judge to enforce the law, don't you?
We absolutely. Well, it's kind of hard to enforce that law. That's a very bad law. Okay. So we would definitely have to, go to the courts and also go to the legislatures to advocate for change. And there's people doing it. There's people working on that now.
So you're going to come back here, right?
Absolutely.
And you come back next week and every week to Public Affairs.